Gaslit Nation. I am your host, Andrea Chalupa, a journalist and filmmaker and the writer and producer of the journalistic thriller Mr. Jones, the film the Kremlin doesn't want you to see, so be sure to watch it. The opening song you heard is Election Day by The Spiders. Go to the show notes and submit your music there for a chance to have it played on the show. All right, everybody. I am rerunning an episode that is a Gaslit Nation classic. It is extraordinarily important in the historical archive of the entire nearly decade of this show because it is an interview with a 91-year-old man, Peter Hidas, who was an activist, who was one of the protesters in the 1956 Hungarian Uprising 70 years ago this year. And Hungarians marked the occasion by taking back their country from Russian imperial rule. This is so extraordinarily significant. I want us to sit with it for a moment. I do not want to jump to the next big thing in the 25-car pile-up train wreck every single day in this country, giving us psychological whiplash. It's not right to live that way. We cannot live that way. So instead, I want to do a grounding exercise in staying grounded in the victory for all the world of Hungary's recent election. So what has happened since? Let me just share and continue the celebration. So Peter Magyar, who is, yes, I concede, a Liz Cheney of Hungary. That's right. He used to be a member of Orban's party. Yes, we understand that. But he is already making major moves to hold Orban accountable. And what is Orban and his whole gang doing? Smokestacks everywhere. They are burning their papers, all the evidence of their crimes and corruption as fast as they can. They're just smokestacks in Hungary right now. And the new prime minister is going after the massive propaganda empire that Orban established. The same that we've witnessed with Trump here, with taking over Voice of America, putting Carrie Lake at Voice of America. Orban did that on steroids. He took over Hungary's taxpayer-funded public media and made it into his own Orban fluffing machine, his propaganda weapon. And as we've always said on the show, genocides, dictatorships begin with propaganda, with disinformation. Trump is a product of Rush Limbaugh, of Fox News, of Sinclair, of that entire massive disinformation army of Kremlin-paid influencers like Benny Johnson and Tim Pool and all of it. Elon Musk taking over Twitter. It began with Rush Limbaugh. It began with Fox News. It began with Michael Savage, right? It started way back when. That's how that disinformation, Fox News, is what set the water boiling, that our frog democracy, the metaphor of the frog in the pot of boiling water. It's getting warmer and warmer and warmer until you're boiling alive. That is fascism taking over our democracy. Fox News set that water boiling. That's where it begins with the propaganda. Viktor Orban played that with taking over the media. And so that is the very first thing that Hungary's new leadership is going after, taking back their publicly owned media. That is everything. That is the name of the game, the information space, unhacking the minds. And what's the second thing he's going after? Funny you should ask. I'm imagining that you asked. CPAC. He's going after CPAC. This is extraordinary. Laws may have been violated. He uncovered and exposed that Orban's government was funding our very own Republican Party with all those circle jerks they were doing, flying over to Hungary. I had one Gaslit Nation listener in Indiana going, why did my lieutenant governor, why did one of my state officials here in Indiana go all the way to Hungary to CPAC? Why are they all flocking there? Because as I've been saying since the start of Gaslit Nation, the war is global. It is global. It was Orban's gang of thieves that were on the payroll, Putin's payroll, blocking aid to Ukraine in the EU, blocking more money for Ukraine to help Russia in its invasion of Ukraine, building up support, consolidating global far-right support for the entire movement, the Tucker Carlsons, the Trumps, the MAGAs, Don Jr., the whole gang was at CPAC in Hungary. They're getting together, trading business cards like in American Psycho, that big famous business card scene. They were strengthening their professional ties, their business ties. They were sharing intelligence, passing around marching orders from the Kremlin back, between MAGA and Trump. Hungary, as we've said on this show for years, was a conduit between MAGA world and the Kremlin. It was an extraordinarily important meeting place for them to get together and share intelligence, just like Berlin in the Cold War. That was Orban's Hungary, and now it's fallen. And to quote one European diplomat from a NATO nation, proud NATO nation, Orban's still not gone, right? So we're not going to fall for the monster movie trick again, where we think the monster's dead, but really they're not. You think, so he's still around. But what's amazing is that the mandate was so strong, he had no choice but to concede the election. And the new leadership so far is going for the jugular. And that legally, financially exposes our Orbans here at home. It is a beautiful thing. And that is why we are rerunning this interview for all of us to sit with the long arc of justice, with a long arc of history, bending towards justice, just like freedom fighters of the past, Martin Luther King and others have always promised us with their moral courage, with their brave deeds. Believe in that. Believe in the giants whose shoulders we stand on. All right. So I know things are dark in America, and they're going to get darker. They're going to get darker because Trump is going to put up a fight heading into 2028. J.D. Vance, Peter Thiel's appointed successor, is going to put up a fight. Palantir, which just unleashed a proud fascist creed, which is the groundwork for a genocide. You don't talk that way, saying some lives are more equal than others unless you plan to commit a genocide. And Palantir right now is building a digital big brother mapping all of us for the Trump regime. I will link to that in the show notes. So I know things are very, very dark, but there are so many signs of hope. And I want to give a shout out to all of the voters in Virginia. I hope your redistricting referendum passed. Thank you to all the Gaslit Nation listeners, Kent and others that sent postcards for Virginia. I know your work made a difference. I'm recording this on Tuesday, April 21st. So the results will be coming in late tonight and tomorrow. And so we'll talk about it on the bonus show and, of course, celebrate hopefully at the salon on Monday. And I want to give a huge congratulations, especially to my mother for being made of steel. She is 80 years old. Doesn't look it, all right? She's like my older sister. So she drove all the way from my dad and mom, drove home from the Mrs. Orwell book launch and went straight to early voting. These are two 80-year-olds in a car for 5 hours between New York and Virginia. And instead of going home and voting the next day in early voting, they went straight to their early voting polling place. And they made sure to cast their vote to fight Republican gerrymandering. That is the stock that I came from. That's who raised me. All right. That's the defiance you hear in my voice. All right, everyone. Now, without further ado, here is my interview with Peter Hidas. And take notice of, the long arc of history bending towards justice. And I will be back with you for this week's bonus show. And I'll be at the salon on Monday to give you all the behind the scenes of the Mrs. Orwell launch and expect some exciting announcements and surprises in the days ahead. Now, 1956, brave students and workers rose up most aggressively in Hungary, starting on October 23rd, 1956, with a poem. When those students started marching, what began as just a peaceful protest led to students taking over radio stations and hanging Soviet soldiers and secret police collaborators in the streets. After weeks of bloody battles, Khrushchev, who had promised to end the totalitarian cult of Stalin and do things differently, instead pulled a Stalin by sending 1,000 tanks to Hungary to crush the uprising. I recently met a Polish woman who remembered seeing the tanks roll through Poland when she was a little girl. I asked her where the tanks came from. She said, "Where do you think? From Russia. They came from Russia, crossing the Polish border from Ukraine." And that's exactly what Putin, who admires Stalin, who brought back the cult of Stalin, will do if we, the anti-fascists, lovingly known as Antifa, don't stop him. That same youth versus empire energy is happening today, toppling governments in Nepal and Madagascar. They're flying a pirate flag known as the Straw Hat Jolly Roger from the popular Japanese manga and anime series One Piece just to capture the spirit of Gen Z today. Protest sign in Nepal said, "Corruption is sus. Stop ghosting democracy." The young people and the workers who shook the Iron Curtain in 1956 laid the groundwork for bringing down the Soviet Empire 3 decades later. It's proof that even so-called failed resistance movements plant the ground for successful ones. We will win. It is just a matter of time. The Hungarian Uprising was just one of several revolts that shook the Iron Curtain. As one revolt led to another, there were student and worker-led uprisings in Poland, Czechoslovakia. My father-in-law, as I talked about on a recent episode out that I'll link to in the show notes, my father-in-law is on Wikipedia for trying to get one started in Romania, the most Stalinist of the regimes. In this special interview, you're going to hear from Peter Hidas, a Hungarian man now in his 90s in Canada who was there in Hungary 69 years ago as a Hungarian law student in Budapest. The Hungarian uprising is considered sacred in Hungary today. Orban's political director caused an uproar by claiming Zelensky should never have resisted Russia, just like Hungarians should never have resisted Soviet rule. And now, here's Stop Time playing Swan Lake Cooperative. Let the swans dance. What inspired you to join the Hungarian Revolution? What was that like in October 1956?
To begin with, I didn't know there is going to be a revolution. It was talk for 3 years, from 1963, 1953, 56. For 3 years, we were talking at the university, at the Petöfi Circle, which was a discussion group for graduates of universities. And we tried to change the world around us. We didn't want to eliminate the regime, but we wanted to eliminate Stalinism. The dictatorship, the very crude dictatorship that was run by the Hungarian government from 1948 to 1953. And the spring came in 1953. Stalin died, and there was hope that there's going to be a humane socialist country. And we worked on that for 3 years. Every week, the new paper, the Literary Gazette, came out, which was full of enlightened ideas of humanistic behavior of the police. And the young people waited on the street for the appearance of the paper, and we reading it on. And so there was a new prime minister, Imre Nagy, and we were very enthusiastic about his ideas. He was advocating the proper treatment of the farmers and many other reforms. But the problem was that the party, the Hungarian Communist Party, remained in the hand of the old dictator, Matthias Rákosi. We were working in one direction, the government was working in another direction. There was a meeting for law students. We had a discussion about the law, how good the law should be. And then somebody brought up the question of Rákosi, the Hungarian dictator. What should be done? What should be done? And I stood up at the back and I said, nothing should be done. Let the courts decide. He should stand in front of the court. And then I stayed quiet. Nothing happened. But things did not change that much. There were two boys at the residence of students who came from the countryside. They were farmer boys, the children of a Hungarian farmer. One of them said, this Rákosi is a real jerk. He's a terrible character. Very conservative communist student reported these two boys. He were arrested, and we were commanded to go to the trial of these two boys. And they were sentenced to 3 years prison. And then the Soviet leadership decided to ease up the situation. They got rid of Rákosi, the old dictator, and put somebody else in charge. And as a matter of fact, there was a big funeral in the summer of 1956. The reburial of the communists who were accused way back of being Titoists and executed by the communist government. And now they were mea culpa, we were sorry that happened, and we were reburied, and they were old heroes again. One of them was Laszlo Wright. And so at the funeral, I was at the funeral, and we were watching the communist leaders making speeches, and some of us were yelling, not them, not them. We don't want to hear them. But nothing happened. We were not touched. Then came October. There were news from things were happening in Poland. And we were excited about it. Maybe changes will come. The workers were rebelling. And we also heard news from the communist leaders of Italy, who were talking about reform communism, changes, humane treatment of everybody. And we love to hear that. On the 22nd of October, at my university, the law faculty, there was a meeting that we should go and have a demonstration the next day. And most people were in favor of it. One of my colleagues stood up and says, you guys are crazy. Blood is going to flow on the street if we do that. And everybody said, you are stupid. What are you talking about, blood on the street? We just want to demonstrate. We just want to tell the world that we want a wonderful Hungary, a wonderful socialist Hungary, a Hungarian Hungary. In any case, it was voted that we are going to demonstrate. I was 22 years old, and I was in my last year of law faculty. I was supposed to become a lawyer. So we went on the street, and we started to march. And we marched at first to the statue of Petőfi, the hero of Hungarians from 1848. And at his statue, an actor stood up and started to recall his famous poem, which starts like, on your feet, Hungarians. The time is now or never. And we were very excited about it. And then we just moved on to the main street of Budapest in the direction of Margaret Bridge. And as we were marching, people were singing, and there were police on the sidewalks. But the girls from the group sometimes jumped out, went to them, and stuck on the policeman the cockard, the Hungarian symbol, the red, white, and green, and smiled at them and kissed them, and then came back to the line, and we marched on. We marched on, and we crossed the Margaret Bridge. And we stood in front of a Polish hero statue, General Bem. We were standing there. There was a place, a building, where Hungarian soldiers were staying. And at one point, the window opened on the top of that building. The flag came out. A soldier pushed out the flag. And what was strange about the Hungarian flag, that the center of it was empty, because in the center was the symbol of the Hungarian state. But that symbol was exactly the same as the symbol on the Soviet flag. And that was the message. We want Hungary, we want socialist Hungary, but not Soviet Hungary.
Did you see Soviet Hungary as a Russian occupation?
It was the occupation by the Red Army since 1945, and we considered it the occupation of a foreign power. Soviet Union is not bringing us a good life. They are turning us into a colony where we are to imitate everything they do, whether it's good or bad, or whether we like it or not. It was my feeling that if that wouldn't have happened, if they would have treated us with respect and not as a colony, then there would have been a much more sympathetic people for the new ideas that the Soviet regime brought to us. So I felt that from their point of view, they made a mess.
And
we stood in front of the parliament, waiting, and everybody was yelling, "Where is Imre Nagy? Where is Imre Nagy? We want to hear him." Imre Nagy was the prime minister of Hungary at the time of following the death of Stalin, and he was supposed to be a reformed socialist minister. We were waiting, and then it was dark, nothing happened, and suddenly some trucks arrived, and there were boys on, and they said, "We are going to the radio, we're going to the radio." We hopped on the truck, and it was driving in the direction of Brody Sándor Street, where the radio was located. But before we got there, we drove in front of a large building. On top of it, there was a red star. And some of the young boys, teenagers, started to yell, "Down with the red star, down with the red star, bring it down, bring it down." We stopped in front of, very close to the radio station, and I got off and walked into the street, and it was crowded, and somebody was distributing the demands of the students, the 16 points. And we were demanding that it should be read in the radio, and the radio station should invite Imre Nagy and ask him to make a speech. The problem was that the door to the radio station was closed, and in front of it there was a sound truck. People said, "Let's go into the radio." So a whole bunch of boys surrounded the truck and pushed it against the door, and the door opened. The door opened, and we held the papers and climbed over the truck, and in front of me there were about 12, 16 secret police soldiers with machine guns, machine pistols. I was really scared. I have to tell you, I was very, very scared. And so what I did, well, I'm not going to get shot here. So I moved to the side. There was a corridor there. We started in the corridor and ran there. And we looked out on the window, and there were officers were standing around. And they said, "What do you want? What do you want? We are very peaceful people. We just want this piece of paper. We want to give it to the director of the radio. Would you let us do that?" No. Oh, okay, come. Then the officer marched us upstairs, closed the door on us in a room. I said, wait a minute. I was worried. And being a good boy and a young boy, there was a phone in the room. What did I do? I called Mother. "Don't worry, Mother, I'm here. Everything is okay." Soon after that, we were told that there is trouble on the street, and they demand that they let us go. And so the radio sportscaster was there, and they asked, "Is anybody would join this gentleman and tell the crowd downstairs that we are okay?" I said, "Okay, I'm coming." And I joined the gentleman, We went to the balcony and looked down, and there was nobody there. There was just gas, and the crowd was far away to the left, and in front of them were the policemen. A few hours later, an army tank came and joined the uprising, who were now armed, the students and the workers. The army was told, soldiers were told to come and help the people at the radio. Now the soldiers came and they stood in front of the National Museum, and they were just standing there doing nothing. And the boys from the factories and whoever joined them went up to the soldiers and said, "What are you doing here? Why don't you just give us your guns and go home?" They did it. They gave the guns to the boys. And this was the beginning of the big shooting on the part of the revolutionaries. I went to the main street and I saw the streetcar on fire. Suddenly, a Hungarian tank arrived. And people said, "Traitors, traitors," and they were throwing things in front of the tank. And the driver of the tank stood up. He says, "You stupid bastards, what are you doing? We are coming to help the siege of the radio." "Very good, glory, glory." And they went and they continued. And eventually, the radio was taken. Suddenly, armed vehicles arrived. But the armed vehicles were Soviet armored vehicles. But they were open on the top. Some of the boys went up to the top of the skyscraper, about eight level roof. They went up, and from above, they were shooting into the armored vehicles. The Red Army was not at all prepared for what was happening at this point. So I was there. They were shooting up, and I was hiding under the table because some of the bullets came into the apartment where I was staying. And that was the beginning. And then we saw people marching to the parliament. I went to the university, to the law school, and there was a meeting. What to do now? And there were different parties already. There was the Farmers' Party, the Social Democratic Party, and people were talking, joining to this and that. So then we were invited to go to the police headquarters. The police switched sides. We were given big containers. And what was in the containers? Guns. Submachine guns, Tommy guns. We opened them. It was terrible. It was all grease. We spent a half a day cleaning them. But now, at the end of the day, we were armed. And we went back to my school. I had a Tommy gun on me. We were banging our guns. We heard that in the center of the city, they are hanging people. There was a rebellion going. And we said, "We can't allow that. We should go and restore order." But they said, "Well, maybe it's okay. We don't know exactly what is happening." And so we stayed put. We were armed. And then people came in and telling us that the secret police is hiding next door. We should go and arrest them. And I said, "Well, let's take a look what's going on." We went upstairs, knocked on the door. A little boy came that he wouldn't let us in. I said, "Look, boy, you have to cut it in." "No," I said, so. Okay, I had to break the window. I reached in, I went inside. And there we did find a guy. He was a secret policeman, a radio guy. He said, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm just a radio guy. I didn't do anything." I said, "Well, you better come with us, otherwise he's going to hang you downstairs." Downstairs, people started, No, we're going to hang him. This is a bad man." I said, "No, you're not. We're going to take him to the police, and they will decide what to do." So we protected the man and escorted him across on the bridge and took him to the police station, dumped him, and left. Went back to the university. The days were going by. We heard news here. The revolution was going on. And came the last days of the revolution. There was a new government. There's going to be a new world, a new government, everybody free. I decided to go home. So I was going home, and on the way, somebody, a group of people stopped me. Said, "You are having a yellow pair of shoes on." I said, "So what? And you have a jacket. You must be a communist." I said, "No, I'm no communist." And they started to hit me. I was very upset. He said, "Where is your proof?" I said, "Oh, I don't have any papers on me. I forgot." They started to hit me. They were getting ready to lynch me. And by that time, a patrol came, and the one who was leading the patrol was a classmate. I said to him, "For God's sake, get me out of here." Meanwhile, the crowd was getting bigger and bigger, and we were marching towards the Margaret Bridge on the Danube. I said, "Okay, boys, that's enough for me. It's time for me to go home." And that was just a day before the Russians came in and defeated the revolution on the 4th of November 1956. And at this point, I decided I'm going to get into trouble for arresting people, carrying guns. The Russians are coming back. The Communist Party is coming back. I'll be in big trouble. I better move on. And I decided to leave the country. One morning, I said goodbye to my parents, and my sister took me to the railway station. I got on the train and took the train in the direction of Austria. We came to a station. Police was lining up, raiding and arresting people. I didn't want to be arrested. I got off on the back side of the train. I ran forward, and I got on the front of the train, the engine. I climbed up on the engine. I was ducking there. The train went on. We did arrive in the border. I managed to get off, except we didn't quite know where we were. I was alone, and some of the people were some friends. And then suddenly the police arrived, the soldiers arrived, the secret police, and we were arrested and taken to a camp. Near the border, there was a Russian tank in the middle of it, and soldiers were there. And I went to the soldiers. "Hey, boys, what are you doing here?" "Well, we are the border guard. How about helping me to get out of this place?" "Are you crazy? You get us into trouble." I said, "No, nobody's going to get into trouble. Just help me to get out of this place." "Okay, come to the border. Here's the border tonight, and we'll help you." And I did. Climbed out, and outside, I was waiting for these boys to help me, but none of them showed up. I was afraid. There was wind blowing. I thought the tanks are coming. It's just the wind, it was nothing else. And I started in one direction, and I ended up on a farm. The farmer helped me. He says, "This way to Austria. My daughter is going there. She will help you." And I walked towards the border. Suddenly, I saw a guy on a hill walking up and down. He's yelling at me, "It's okay, okay, Austria, Austria." I knew I was in Austria. That was the beginning of a new life for me. And I haven't seen Hungary after that for many, many years, until the new communist government issued an amnesty and allowed the visitors to visit Hungary. By that time, they hanged many of the boys who participated in the revolution for a visit.
What was the role of women in the revolution? There's a famous photo of a young woman holding a rifle in the Hungarian uprising.
Women participated. They carried guns. They were equal. The communists taught us that men and women are the same. They didn't practice it because the parliament had very few women.
What do you think is the legacy of the Hungarian uprising today?
The legacy is that if you want to obtain the sympathy of people, you want to vote for them, you want to adopt their ideas, you have to treat them well. You have to treat them with respect. And you have to remember their tradition. You have to learn their history. And don't offend their pride and their family and their tradition. Whether it's life in the temple, in a church, in a synagogue, whatever it is, you have to respect people. If you respect people and you treat them properly, they will listen to you. This is a lesson, I think, if they want to be in the arms of the people, if they want to be loved by the people, they have to love the people. You have to do that to all people, because there's only one race in this world. And that's the human race. And if we remember that, we will also succeed in being happy in our lives.
What do you think of Viktor Orban and how pro-Moscow Viktor Orban is? Doesn't that seem like a betrayal of the Hungarian uprising?
He is an illegitimate dictator of Hungary. He's determined to keep power for himself, his relatives, and his friends. He has only one love, and that's himself.
our discussion continues, and you can get access to that by signing up at the Truth Teller level or higher on Patreon. Discounted annual memberships are available, and you can give the gift of membership. Get bonus shows, invites to exclusive events, all our shows ad-free, and more at patreon.com/gaslit. That's patreon.com/gaslit. Thank you to everyone who supports the show. To help Ukraine with urgently needed humanitarian aid, join me in donating to Razom for Ukraine at razomforukraine.org. To support refugees in conflict zones, donate to Doctors Without Borders at doctorswithoutborders.org. And to protect critically endangered orangutans already under pressure from the palm oil industry, donate to the Orangutan Project at theorangutanproject.org and check your products for palm oil because it's everywhere. Gaslit Nation is produced by Andrea Chalupa. Our associate producer is Carlin Daigle. And our founding production manager is Nicholas Torres. If you like what we do, please leave us a review on iTunes. It helps us reach more listeners. Original music in Gaslit Nation is produced by David Whitehead, Martin Vissenberg, Nick Barr, Damian Arriaga, and Carlin Daigle. Our logo design was generously donated by Hamish Smythe of the New York-based firm Order. Thank you so much, Hamish. Gaslit Nation would like to thank our supporters at the producer level on Patreon and higher: Jans Alstrup Rasmussen, Katie Masuris, Ann Bertino, David East, Dawn Rossiter, Deborah Schiff, Diana Gallagher, D.L. Singfield, Ice Bear is Defiant, James D. Leonard, Jared Lombardo, Joe Darcy, Kevin Gannon, Kristen Custer, Larry Gasson, Leah Campbell, Leo Chalupa, Lily Wachowski, Marcus J. Trent, Mark, Nicole Spear, Randall Brewer, Sherry Escobar, Todd, Dan, Milo, and Cubby. Work for Better, Prep for Trouble, Ruth Ann Harnish, and Tanya Chalupa. Thank you all so much for your support of the show. We could not make Gaslit Nation without you.